Welcome into the show, everyone. Christian Jackson, joined by special guest Brody Lusk of OU Insider. He is our Oklahoma expert for today. Brody, thanks for joining me.
Oh yeah, it's great to be on here talking college basketball, man. The next 5 months, best time of the year.
It's go time, and every year there's a few power conference schools that are a little under the radar that really surprise people, and Oklahoma is one of those teams that I really like. The coach and the players they brought in the portal, I think they're very under the radar. I don't mean to get ahead of myself because I want to dive into this roster with you, but any reflections quickly on just the Jeremiah Fears year and what this offseason was like for Oklahoma?
Yeah, I would say Jeremiah Fears saved Porter Moser's job. Obviously, that team without Jeremiah Fears, it wouldn't have gone very far. And how incredible to see someone who was 18 years old at the time lead a team in the toughest conference in college basketball to the NCAA tournament. So obviously, great for Porter Moser to even land Fears and have Fears lead him to the tournament. And I'll say he did a really good job building off that momentum. Jeremiah Fears is the first player that Oklahoma has had drafted since Porter Moser's been in Norman. And this offseason in the portal, he fully took advantage of that. And when it comes to selling recruits, he did a great job selling recruits on having a similar role to Jeremiah Fears. So I think they really did a good job building off that momentum. And I think this team, compared to last year, not to get ahead of myself, but I think this will be a lot better team for Oklahoma this season.
Yeah, as great as Fears was, asking so much of him on a nightly basis, kind of hit that wall a little bit, but then, kind of regrouped and finished well.
Yeah.
Obviously could have won that game against UConn as
Yeah.
well in the tournament. Before I get into these pieces one by one, there's one kind of overarching thing I wanted to ask about. So last season was the first year under Porter Moser in like 7 or 8 years that his offense was better than his defense. Is that basically just a Jeremiah Fears thing, or do you think, that's a trend that we could, because there's a lot of shooting on this roster as we'll get into, but do you think this can be a really good defense in back to the way Porter Moser wants to play basketball?
I think it can, and I think when you look at this team, the what I've seen, the narrative is they won't be that great on defense. But I'll tell you, the expectation inside the building is that this team will be much improved defensively. Just they're much taller, much longer, and they believe that the guys they have on the wing are going to be a lot better defensively. And so I think, yeah, I mean, I think they'll be also really good offensively, and I think that did last season have some to do with Jeremiah Fears. It also had to do with they had guys like Kobe Elvis and Bryson Goodine running around in the backcourt. Those guys are not very good defensively. So I think it's just this roster construction is much better for Porter Moser to have a really good defense like we've seen in years past from his teams.
Let's start with this transfer backcourt. Xavier Brown coming over from St. Joe's. A really talented team last year. It didn't fully come together for them, but they beat Texas Tech and Villanova early on, and he's a really good guard. He averaged 22 a game in the A10 tournament. What's the jump for him to the Power 5 level look like? We've seen it in certain games with him, of course, against that level of competition. But
Yeah.
what have you kind of been seeing from him? Is he ready to be the point guard for this team?
Well, they believed that Xavier Brown was the best point guard available in the portal, so
Wow.
it was a really big get for them. And obviously, they brought his stepdad over from St. Joe's as well, Justin Scott. He was the associate head coach there. He's now an assistant coach under Porter Moser, so package deal there. But one of the things I've been really looking for with this team is how, like you mentioned, how is the transition for Xavier Brown going to be going up from the A10 to the SEC? And I did have some questions about it, and not to overreact to anything on an exhibition, but when they beat Wisconsin in their exhibition last Friday, Xavier Brown looked great. And obviously Wisconsin, very solid college basketball team. So, he had 18 points and I want to say 4 rebounds, 4 assists. So, I think there will be some moments where you have turnovers or you have issues like that. That's some of the things we've heard is he's turning the ball over just a little bit too much. And you kind of want him to move past that. But I think the luxury that Xavier Brown has as Oklahoma's point guard this year that Jeremiah Fears didn't necessarily have last year, Xavier Brown has a very experienced backcourt mate who's gone to the Final Four next to him that he can lean on. So I think that combination will really work well for Xavier Brown and help him make the jump from the A10 to the SEC.
Nigel Pack is a player I have a lot of thoughts on. He's someone who really I feel like is being slept on nationally and is kind of misunderstood in the way that people see 6 foot and they think he's a point guard. I'm not saying he's not a point guard, but he played with Marquise Noel at Kansas State. That's a point guard.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
At Miami, he played with Final Four team. Isaiah Wong had the ball a lot, so of course he can handle the ball. But when Miami kind of fell off, it was because they kind of put Nigel Pack into this role where he had to handle the ball too much, and that's not. He's a perfect off-ball guard who can give you that secondary ball handling, but he is a absolute sniper. We know that, so I'm really excited for Nigel Pack. I have a conspiracy theory that he just like smartly realized that Miami was trash last year and was like, let me just save my eligibility and go somewhere next year. I'm happy he did that because I think this is a perfect fit. So setting you up here, is Nigel Pack healthy and ready to go this year?
Yeah, Nigel Pack's healthy and he's very ready to go. I'll tell you, in the exhibitions, they played a closed door scrimmage against Texas Tech, and they beat them by one. And then they had an exhibition against Wisconsin, and in that closed door scrimmage against Tech, Nigel Pack was their leading scorer, and he scored 21 points. Of course, all 21 of those were from behind the arc. He was 7 for 15 from three, and then he had 15 the other night against Wisconsin. And the biggest thing I saw is this is a player that when he gets hot, man, he gets really hot. And I mean, he was very silent throughout the first half of that game, and then it just exploded for 15 points in the second half. And like you mentioned, I don't think he'll be playing much point guard this year. It's going to be obviously Xavier Brown will be the starting point guard for this team with Pack starting at the two. But even they'll bring Dayton Forsyth, a returnee who was pretty solid for them as a freshman in the SEC. They'll bring him in off the bench to play point guard. So you'll primarily be seeing Pack as a two, and I think that's a really good fit. The interesting thing is Pack and Tay Davis on this team were actually high school teammates, and both from Indianapolis. So there's a connection there that I think will be really fun to watch. Obviously, both those guys expecting to be the two leading scorers on this team. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun watching Nigel Pack. The type of player that can go and give you 20, 30 on any given night. And he's been really consistent throughout the 5 seasons or 4.5 that he's played college basketball. So he'll be fun. I mean, a lot of Oklahoma fans remember when he was at K-State, he was torching Oklahoma from behind the arc. So, yeah, Final Four player, and Porter Moser's really been vocal about once you get a guy who's gone to the Final Four, they want to go back, and they're not going to be okay with being a solid basketball team. So I think it's cool to see the backcourt they have with Brown and Pack, but also Pack and Tay Davis being former high school teammates.
One of my favorite parts of the series is learning stuff like that. Those guys being high school teammates. I didn't know about Xavier Brown's dad. And Nigel Pack, just one last note on him. He had 26 and went 7 for 10 from 3 in that Sweet 16 game to beat Houston.
Yeah.
Miami should not have had a chance to beat Houston in that game. Like the way that Houston guards, they scored 90 on Houston. It's because Nigel Pack is an elite level shooter, like a top 10 at the lowest like shooter in college basketball.
Yeah, and I'll say with Nigel Pack, I think a lot of like the narrative has been that he's just going to be terrible defensively. He's not going to be great defensively, but this is a player he's not going to be bad. I think the thing you're going to get from him on a night-to-night basis, just based on watching him in the past, is he's going to give a ton of effort defensively. Even if maybe he'll get beat a few times. I don't think he's that bad defensively. I don't think he's going to be a liability for Oklahoma on the defensive end whatsoever.
Miami was 99th and 107th on KenPom defense the years they made the Elite Eight and Final Four.
Yeah.
And I know he wasn't on the Elite Eight team, he was on the Final Four team, but their whole thing was forcing turnovers and ball pressure, and like he can buy into that. He's not like what's it called, a revolving door. I want to get into these wings.
Yeah.
Another reason why I'm super excited about this team. Darian Reed coming over from Alabama, and Tay Davis coming over from Notre Dame. So Darian Reed, in his freshman year, only 14 minutes a game, 6 points, but and you can look at the box score and see 26% for three-point shooter.
Yeah.
But he has a very nice three-point stroke for his size. Big-time athlete. Love the way he defends. Tay Davis played for these bad Notre Dame teams, but Notre Dame has been one of my favorite bad teams the past couple of years because of guys like him who play really hard, and defensively he plays really hard, super versatile, and then offensively kind of grew into his own a little bit, being able to put the ball on the floor in some interesting actions. I'm super high on both these guys. Go one by one. What do you see in Darian Reed, Tay Davis this year?
Darian Reed coming over, the big thing for him when he came to Oklahoma is he wants to be a 3. Alabama, he was a 4. He wants to be a 3 because he believes that's going to be his best route to go into the NBA. And obviously, the hope within the building this year is that Darian Reed's a first-round draft pick after this season if he can
Wow.
unlock his full potential, because they believe he can be that good. He can be their next first round draft pick. He really impressed me. I just was questioning, like, obviously you mentioned he's not a bad shooter. I believe I was told he shot like 40% on the EYBL circuit, so he can shoot the ball. Obviously last year he was really banged up, struggling with injuries throughout the whole season. The first thing that any Oklahoma fan, just from being able to watch that exhibition against Wisconsin, will tell you is Darion Reed made 2 3-pointers very early on in the game. Good sign. I'd be curious, like, how much do you take away from these exhibitions? Because we're in an interesting point in college basketball where we're seeing these exhibitions be televised. You can't take away too much, but something like seeing a player like Darion Reed hit 2 3s, definitely a good sign for a team like Oklahoma. But they're going to ask him to score it more. He had 14 in that exhibition, and then he had, I believe, 15 against Texas Tech. So he'll be asked to do more offensively. They really like his defensive ability, obviously. But I think he's kind of the X factor for this team. If Darion Reed will be good and can score the ball and be a scoring option, I think the ceiling for this team is a lot higher. And so I think a lot hinges upon him. Obviously, ton of potential, very athletic, can be a slasher. But if he can shoot the ball at a decent rate, like even just 35% from three, like I said, the ceiling for this team rises. And then Tay Davis. Tay Davis is a player who was banged up against Wisconsin, so he didn't really play in the second half of that scrimmage. Texas Tech, that game, he had 20. He's going to be, I think, the leading scorer for this team.
Wow.
But what has really been surprising, because obviously coming over from Notre Dame, we knew he had the offensive ability to be a scorer. And Oklahoma had Jalen Moore last year, who did a lot of their. He was an offensive hub for this team last year at the four. Tay Davis is going to be a very similar role because offensively he scores in very similar ways. The difference is Jalen Moore was 6'6". Tay Davis is 6'9". So there's a lot more versatility that they have with Tay Davis. But I think the biggest thing that stood out with him that has really surprised me, I didn't know what to expect from him on a defensive end, but Porter Moser at SEC Media Days, and let me put it this way, Moser's not the type of guy to go on, SEC Media Days and hype up a player. Last year, he didn't hype up Fears one bit. Porter Moser said that Tay Davis has the potential to be the National Defensive Player of the Year on the defensive end. He said he's that good. So that's really stood out is Tay Davis, like if he can be that good defensively, also be what he was at Notre Dame last year offensively, Oklahoma really may have something in Tay Davis. I think he can be one of the better players in the SEC if he's really going to be that solid defensively. And they're going to do a lot through him. I think this is a perfect fit for him just because the way he plays offensively and how Porter Moser's utilized similar type players in the past. So I think it'll be a really good fit. And obviously, really interesting to see him hyping Porter Moser hyping Tay Davis up this much defensively.
Mohamed Wagi, who, went to 3 schools in 3 years, stays at
Yeah.
Oklahoma. Obviously, found something here. I like the way he played down the stretch. Specifically, tell me what you expect out of him this year. Obviously, if you look at the whole season, only 12 minutes game. Can you kind
Yep.
of speak of why it took him time to kind of earn that trust? And oh no, Sam Godwin was hurt.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
it was,
Sam
right?
Godwin got hurt. And then those last 6 games, which were against like Kentucky, Missouri, Texas, UConn, Georgia. Mo McGee, when he was playing over 20 minutes a game, averaged, I want to say, 9 and 6. So he was very solid when they asked him to do more. He was the backup to Sam Godwin. At times, he played better than Sam Godwin. The thing with him's kind of always been, can he stay out of foul trouble? That's something that he really got better at as the year went on. At the beginning of the year, you'd get him in and he would get in foul trouble rather quickly. And Sam Godwin was solid for them last year, but I think Mo Wagi gives you more rim protecting than Godwin gave you. He's a little bit more athletic than Godwin. But I think I'm expecting. I want to say like what you got from him down the stretch, 9 and 6. Just to be. They don't need him to be some type of scoring big. They just need him to be solid. And they need him to stay out of foul trouble. He needs to be able to play 22 plus minutes every single night. And so if he can do that, then they like what they have in Mo McGee. I'll tell you, they're very high on him defensively within that building. That's one thing that I don't think a lot of people factor in it. Porter Moser loves Mo McGee's defensive ability. So another like athletic player that they have, and that's what I really like about this team. You look from the 3 to the 5, you have 6'8" Darion Reed, 6'9" Tay Davis, and then 6'10" Mo McGee. So I think they'll be really solid defensively on the wings and down low. And I think Mo McGee will have a really solid season. I don't think it'll be anything special, but when you're for the guys you have starting next to are Xavier Brown, Nigel Pack, Darion Reed, and Tay Davis, you just need to be able to set screens and finish down low, dunk the basketball. So I think he'll be able to do that. And that's really what they're looking for from him.
100%. Well said. Taking a look at this bench, who want to start with? Let me start with Jadon Jones, who Long Beach State was a guy that a lot of people wanted in the portal.
Mm-hmm.
Former defensive player in the year in his conference, really good three-point shooter. I know he redshirt, was hurt, and I know he didn't play in the scrimmage. I was kind of tracking it, but I don't really know the read on the situation. Is he a guy that's going to factor in here?
First off, let me say I really like Oklahoma's bench. I really like the depth they have on the bench. We'll get into more guys, but yeah, Jadon Jones, man, I think he could be the odd man out. I think that's kind of where we're at right now. He was banged up all last season, and then earlier in October gets banged up, and it's not supposed to be a long-term injury, just more a soreness type thing. And he missed both the scrimmages, and when you're battling for rotation spots, missing those scrimmages, it does mean something, and he hasn't practiced in a while. So, if they like Jadon Jones is someone who I think he definitely could factor into this rotation. One, because if you can shoot the ball from three and play defense the way he did at Long Beach State on a team that went to the NCAA tournament, he'll have a role. The thing is, these other guys they have ahead of him are also impressing right now. So it'll be interesting to see how much he factors in. I think maybe if he does, he's an 8th, 9th man type deal on this team. The guys they have for 6th and 7th feel very, very locked in. So he's kind of competing with some other guys for those spots. But I think higher on a lot of other guys more so than Jadon Jones as far as the bench.
Okay, so does that mean that 6 and 7 is that Nwankwo and Forsyth, or is that Cool Attack, who I know you were gassing up too?
Yeah, it'll be Dayton Forsyth and Jeff Nwankwo. Dayton Forsyth, obviously, like I said, he scored in double figures 3 times in the SEC last season. He had like 25 points against Ole Miss on the road. It was a really impressive game. He's kind of been someone that's always really, local kid from the state of Oklahoma, but those who have really watched him knew that he was a lot better than a 3-star recruit. He last year he was a spark plug off the bench for them. Around Norman, they called him Sparky because he'd come in and make plays. It wasn't necessarily scoring, but more so he does all the little things well that you would want. The thing with him is there's a lot more potential to him than just being a spark plug. He can score it offensively, really good with the mid-range. He can shoot it, but he's more than just a stand-in-the-corner shooter guy. So I think you're going to see a lot more be asked of him. He'll probably play 20-plus minutes a night. He'll be the 6th man for this team off the bench. And I think that's one thing that's really exciting is there's a lot of untapped potential with Dayton Forsyth that could really make this team a lot better. So I think when you talk about the backcourt and you talk about Xavier Brown and Nigel Pack, I would throw Dayton Forsyth into that conversation as well, just because he proved he can score it different times throughout the season last year in the SEC. It's hard for a true freshman to play a lot of minutes in the SEC. He was one of a few that did it. I think it's funny. I would compare him to Travis Perry from Kentucky that's now at Ole Miss. Very similar type guards. But I think he'll have I think he'll surprise a lot of people this season. Dayton Forsyth will. And then Jeff Nwankwo missed all of last season with the torn Achilles. But before he went down, this is a guy who came over from the JUCO ranks last year. And then in the summer, they said he was probably the best player on the team. That was before Jeremiah Fears got there. But they were really high on Jeff Nwankwo and his athletic ability and the fact that he can shoot it. He is going to be the 7th man on this team. And I kind of had some questions with him. Obviously, coming off a torn Achilles on a guy that they were raving about his athletic ability. Will that look the same after the Achilles injury, or will he not be able to be as athletic? It seems like he's going to look just like he did before the injury. He came back from that Achilles injury very quickly. He was ready to go in January, but it just doesn't make sense to throw a guy out there and burn a year, when he's missed all of the first part of the year. So I think he'll be a really big factor onto this team. Him and Forsyth are kind of going to be the 2 guys that play the most off the bench. He'll probably 15 to 20 minutes a night for Nwankwo. He can shoot it. He's really athletic. And he's another one of these athletic wings that they have on this team alongside Darion Reed and Tay Davis. And Nwankwo can defend really well too. So those 2 guys will have a really big role off the bench for this team. And those are the 2 guys that I feel are locked into the rotation spots. Everyone else, very up in the air.
Tell me about Attack then. The red-shirted. I know you said
Yeah,
he was shooting the ball well, but I don't know much about
yeah.
him.
Well, a Koala Attack is, man. There's a ton of potential with them. I mean, there was not one player that was talked up to me more this offseason than Koala Attack. I mean, and the thing you'll see with him, he's 6'9", probably a 180. So he needs to add more weight. But he's very tall, so I mean, long wingspan, so he can shoot over defenders. But he was their leading scorer this offseason for a majority all the summer, and then he had a lot of times in scrimmages where he would lead the team in scoring in inter squad scrimmages. So he's maybe the best overall offensive player on this team, arguably. He's definitely the best shooter they have on this team. So, I mean, 6'9", really tall. He can shoot over you, and he's not afraid to shoot it. I mean, he came in the Wisconsin scrimmage, and within a span of 1 minute, he had hit one off a pick and roll or a pick and pop and just drains it. And then another one from way behind the NBA three-point line. So, really, really skilled shooter. The questions with him are on the defensive end. Obviously, that's why he redshirted last season, is because he's not big defensively and probably a traffic cone defensively most of the time. Um, so if he can be like, the thing with him is he's such a good shooter that he has to have a role on the team. But it's kind of going to be, I think, night to night dependent on how much he plays, just because of his defense. He's not great defensively, but I think he'll be. I think that I really think that he's going to be a guy that's going to go for. He's going to make 6 to 8 3-pointers in a game this season. I have that bold take. I think he'll do it because he can get, similar to Nigel Peck, when he gets hot, he gets really, really hot. I mean, there were multiple times throughout the summer, the offseason, that I heard he just went off, and there's not much you can do about it. Like, teams would literally, or Oklahoma, Porter Moser, one thing about Porter Moser, hates to play zone defense, right? Very rarely does it. I heard in the offseason that they were going zone just to defend, uh, or just to keep Cool Attack on the floor, because you can hide them. They felt they could hide them better. And last season, they played Bryson Goodine. He was their best three-point shooter. He scored 34 against Texas A&M. He was bad defensively too. I think they're going to use Attack in a similar way to the way they used Bryson Goodine last year, hiding him defensively in different matchups. So I think he'll definitely have a role on this team. And the first thing people are going to see is this kid coming off the bench that's 6'9", 180, not big at all, but he can shoot the lights out.
Before we finish up here, any other of these names on the bench that you want to share about?
Yeah, yeah, Kai Rogers. He was a really big get for Porter Moser. Porter Moser's recruited really well at Oklahoma. Obviously, he recruited Milos Uzan, recruited Otega Owe, recruited Jeremiah Fears. So he's recruited really well, but he's never recruited a big that could come in and play. Kai Rogers is a very highly touted big out of OTE. This is someone that they're really high on. They're really high on Kai Rogers, and he had a really good offseason. He played really well in that Wisconsin exhibition, but they really like what they have in Kai Rogers. It's hard for a freshman center to come in and play in the SEC. Um, I think he'll be someone that can do it, though. The thing with him is he's really naturally skilled defensively, so he blocks a lot of shots. But there's still some things on the offensive end and some things on the defensive end that you can tell he's a freshman. But I do think he'll have quite the role on this team. I mean, when you look at them at the five, you have Mo McGee and then you have Kai Rogers. So they will need to get 10 minutes a night from Kai Rogers, their true freshman. And I mean, Porter Moser said, I mean, Kai Rogers is going to be really, really good for this team. He's kind of a guy that I look at is he's going to get better and better as the year goes on. It could be come March a guy that's really, I mean, playing 15 minutes a night, splitting minutes with Mo McGee, because he is like, I mean, he's the center that could really be a weapon for you. Mo McGee, I think, is more so just going to be a solid guy. Kai Rogers, if he can unlock his potential, could be really, really solid for this team. But at the five, it'll be, I mean, when Mo McGee goes out, and we've seen him struggle with foul trouble in the past, they'll either go to Tay Davis and play small ball, look at the five, just because that gives you a matchup that is hard for most opposing centers to guard Tay Davis, or they'll go to Kai Rogers. So I expect him to have a pretty big year for them. It's just as far as a guy off the bench that's going to be solid. He's one of 3 freshmen they have on this team. They also have Alec Blair, who was a top 70 recruit on the wing. The thing with him is he plays baseball too. He was one of the top. I mean, it's a shocker he didn't go in the MLB draft, but he's also playing baseball at Oklahoma, and he played baseball. So if you know anything about how recruiting rankings work, obviously you do. if you don't play EYBL and you don't play any basketball over the summer, you're not going to be ranked that high. Alec Blair didn't play any summer basketball. He just played school basketball because he played baseball in the summer. So he was top 70 and he didn't play on the EYBL circuit or anything. So he's someone that they believe will be really solid. Obviously, baseball is his primary sport, but he's going to give them potentially some solid minutes. He'll be that 10th, 11th guy, depending on where Jadon Jones factors in. And then they have Andreas Holst. He came over from overseas. A lot of people were really high on him. I know Illinois was a school that wanted him. You know, he's going to be pretty solid, but I don't think this year. I think he'll be a guy that redshirts just because, you know, he didn't the visa issue. He couldn't come in until September. So, you know, they have three freshmen. Obviously, I think Kai Rogers will have a big role. Alec Blair could play a little bit, but I think those are three guys that will be solid for them in the future. So, yeah, we've seen Porter Moser recruit really well, and that's the thing with this team: the great transfer class that he brought in, but also Jeff Nwankwo didn't play last season. Koala Tack didn't play last season. Dayton Forsyth has a ton of untapped potential, and then Kai Rogers, a freshman who also has a ton of potential. So I think it'll be a really exciting year in Norman. I definitely think this team isn't going to finish 12th in the SEC like they were predicted. I think that's way too low for them. Probably somewhere in the 7 to 8 range is where I'd personally have Oklahoma.
I've got them circled as my 4 through 7 seed that's going to be very live to like make a deep run. That's how I'm envisioning Oklahoma, because this league is so good. It's hard to imagine them just like, you know, going in on the road and beating, you know, some of the best teams that maybe have really good front courts. But I'm just really high on what this roster can be all fused together.
And I'll say they have you're never in the SEC having a favorable schedule. But as far as what it could be, that their schedules, it sets up pretty nice. I mean, they have two tough, like every road game is really tough in the SEC, but Kentucky and Tennessee are the only teams of the top bunch in the SEC that they play on the road. So Florida, Auburn, Arkansas, all those top teams are at home. So I do think that's one thing that is notable with this team is I think their schedule's a lot easier than it was last year. Obviously not easy, but a lot easier than it was last year. I mean, we're going to find out with this team because November 8th, they play Gonzaga in Spokane. So we're going to find out pretty quickly. I know that, we just got the news that Ty Grant Foster is going to be playing for Gonzaga this season, rightfully so. That's going to be a good Gonzaga team. I think they're ranked, 21 right now, which is low. Probably really low for them. So we'll find out with this team what they're going to look like in that game against Gonzaga. I think it's really, this is the first year with Porter Moser at Oklahoma that they've had a test like that this early on out the gate. So I'm very excited to see how they hold up against Gonzaga on the road and what they look like in that game. That should be a pretty fun matchup.
There you have it, the Oklahoma Sooners. Brody, thanks for coming on and breaking it down with me.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Great to talk college basketball.